Tippy time, my damies, Top Cat here, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are back on our Warlock for our new Arc 3.0 build. This build is going to give us an extended super, a quick supercharge, heaps of ionic traces to make that ability spam even more potent than it normally is. To achieve all of this, we are going to be using the Warlock exotic helmet, the Crown of Tempests. Its armor perk, Conduction Tines, Arc ability, or now Jolt final blows increase the recharge rate of your arc abilities and extend the duration of your storm trance. So of course we are using the storm trance super, chain lightning from your hands, tickle fingers, electrifies with devastating streams of arc light that intensify over time. Casting storm trance creates a shockwave, this is our landfall, on enemies below us, and we also now have the ability to teleport around, so it's both the trees combined. And you can see just how extended that super is. The Crown of Tempest pushed this super out to 30 seconds. Now that's extremely long and allows you to do a lot of damage. Particularly with the teleport, it doesn't use all that much super energy, so you can blink around, get that mobility, and just go out and slay everything around you. Like I said, the landfall is great to drop down on the initial point of attack, and the more tickle fingers you get on somebody, the more damage it does over time. So now that we got a long super, we want to get that super as soon as possible. We're using the Coldheart for this very reason. The Coldheart is an ionic trace farming machine. If you're laying down damage on a target, it's just going to keep on feeding you ionic trace after ionic trace after ionic trace. And these just pump up not only your super ability, your class ability, grenade, melee, rift, everything. So it takes me about a minute of just laying down suppressive fire on things and I'll have a full super back. So a 30-second super, and it takes me a minute to generate another one again. So heaps of uptime for both your abilities and your super. The conduction tines state that every arc ability or jolt final blows increase the recharge rate. So every time you're spamming out a grenade, you're getting that grenade energy back. Every time you're getting an arc soul damage, you're getting arc soul energy back. We're going to use Healing Rift and the Arc Soul Arc aspect. Cast your rift to create an Arc Soul that fires at targets in front of you. Allies can pass through this rift to gain an Arc Soul as well. Your rift also charges faster when allies are near. Whilst you're amplified as well, the Arc Souls are going to get supercharged and gain an increased fire rate. We are going to be using the Electrostatic Mind Arc aspect. Defeating targets with your arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded debuffed targets also creates ionic traces. We collect these ionic traces, those make us amplified. That amplification is going to speed up our turret, making it supercharged. Extremely deadly, rapid fire turret. I prefer using the Chain Lightning Arc melee, an extended range melee that jolts your targets and chains lightning to nearby enemies. Also, because we've got those ionic traces feeding us amplification, it's going to create an additional set of chains, so it's just a bigger melee. Feel free to use whatever grenade you favor, but I'm using the arc bolt grenade. I like the chaining, I like the spread of the damage, and it's more about getting the jolts than it is the actual grenade damage. If you want a harder hitting, more DPS focused grenade, I would look at the pulse grenade, as it does a lot more ticks and creates good amounts of ionic traces as well to feed back that ability energy. Spark of Shock is going to add jolt to our grenades, and Spark of Ions, after defeating a jolted target, is going to create our ionic traces. And this is one of the reasons I like the Arc Bolt grenade, because it goes out, finds the targets, the jolt finishes off the targets, the ionic traces come back to you. That way I can chuck another grenade out straight away and just keep this loop going. The Coldheart's trait, Longest Winter, periodically generates ionic traces while it's in high damage state. So this is when we lay the trigger down. The longer the trigger is held down, the more traces we're getting fed back to us. Now trace rifles are a bit of a weird one. People don't often like using them because they're kind of trapped halfway between a special and a primary. But this is a Ponton Might build, so we can do more damage, and that's why we don't have to use as much ammo. Now we're also using Spark of Discharge. Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create ionic traces, so even more traces are coming to us. So just think about that. Our abilities can generate ionic traces, then we have a jolt thing, so our grenades can grant additional ionic traces. The Coldheart grants additional traces, and then we have a fragment saying our special weapons does it as well. Our last fragment, Spark of Beacons, additionally, whilst we're amplified, is going to make final weapon blows create a blinding explosion. So now we have a Coldheart that's phantomited, creating ×2 amounts of ionic traces and blinds surrounding targets as well. Its intrinsic trait, Cold Fusion. This weapon shoots a steady beam of Cold Fusion arc laser, dealing more damage the longer it remains on a target. So this makes it good for your yellow bars as well. So this is the niche that you need to get used to, that it can kill red bars and yellow bars alike, and it's just about holding that sustained fire down on them and dealing X amount of damage to them. It is a little bit to get used to. They've always been in a weird place, trace rifles, but I have to say this season the Coldheart is finally good again, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. In terms of our armor mods, on our helmet we are running an Elemental Light. Trace Rifle Ammo Finder ×2, we're really going to need this as we are leaning right into the Coldheart. Seeking Wells. I'm running Unstoppable Shotgun. This is primarily for in-game content, but feel free to swap this out depending on what you're doing. But I'm running a double special build, as the Coldheart does fill this slot between special weapon and primary weapon, and if you've got enough ammo finders and enough scavengers, you can get away with this in the majority of the content you're going to be doing. So it works in dungeons, raids, general activities. GMs might be a place you might want to swap this out though. We're using Overload LMG as well. LMGs are finally in a bit of a sweet spot and actually feel like they do some damage now. So I've been using them in the raids, dungeons, most encounters, and they seem to be working quite well now. So I'm actually quite in love with this. Of course, it's great for stunning champions, and because I am leaning into the Coldheart, I can run a different elemented one depending on which match game I'm facing. On our chest, we are running an Elemental Ordnance, Thermoshock Plating for reduced solar and arc incoming damage, and some Trace Rifle reserves. A Phantomite for some bonus damage. We're using an LMG Scavenger, but more importantly, we are going to require a Trace Rifle Scavenger. Bountiful Wells for additional wells, and very importantly, we're going to use Lightning Strikes twice. After throwing an arc grenade, gain increased grenade recharge for a short duration. If you want to give this build a go, I'll leave a dim in the description below. But that is the video for today, my folks. If you liked it, please chuck us a thumbs up. If you're new and you liked it, please hit that sub button. It goes a long way towards growing the channel, and I'm mucho apreciado. If you've got any questions or suggestions, feel free to comment down below. But until next time, tippy tie my damies, what a tie.